This episode of Rhizome is brought to you in part by the Synthesis Security Group and Fuzzy Wuzzy Signal Processing, a venture of Ian Swanke. Copyright 2026. All rights reserved.
All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating look into the cultural fabric of a place often called the City of Dreamers, San Francisco. We're going to explore how the city hasn't just, merely tolerated its eccentric, unconventional minds throughout history, but has actively protected and amplified them, giving them a real platform to thrive. Okay, let's dive right into this. What do a 19th century emperor, a grieving horror author, and an intergalactic reality star actually have in common? I mean, on the surface, absolutely nothing, right? But structurally, they represent this unbroken chronological lineage of radical civic acceptance that totally defines San Francisco's identity. So let's trace this lineage step by step to see exactly how this remarkable culture was built. First up, Emperor Norton's reign. We're starting our journey way back in the 1800s to meet the guy who essentially set the city's foundational template for embracing the unconventional, Joshua Abraham Norton. Now, Norton's trajectory is just wild. Born in England, he shows up in San Francisco around the 1849 gold rush and makes an absolute killing trading real estate and commodities. But then, in 1852, he gets this idea to corner the market by buying an entire ship's cargo of Peruvian rice. He thought there was a shortage. Unfortunately for him, several other rice ships unexpectedly docked just days later, totally crashing the market. This entirely ruined him. I mean, by 1856, he's filing for bankruptcy. But then, fast forward to September 1859, he casually walks right into the offices of the Daily Evening Bulletin newspaper and hands them a document that changed everything. It was a proclamation declaring himself Norton I, Emperor of the United States. And this brilliantly illustrates how San Francisco operates. Instead of tossing him in an asylum or treating him like a nuisance, the city wholeheartedly embraced his imaginary monarchy. He'd patrol the streets every single day in this blue officer's uniform and a top hat with peacock feathers. But here's the thing. His decrees weren't just the ramblings of a madman. A lot of them were incredibly prescient. Decades before they actually existed, he demanded a suspension bridge to Oakland and a Transbay tunnel. He called for a League of Nations, pushed for women's suffrage, and even equal rights for minorities. Oh, and he also instituted a strict $25 fine for anyone caught calling the city Frisco. The city fiercely protected him. Actually, an incident from 1867 is the perfect proof of this. An overzealous special police officer actually arrested Norton, trying to force him into mental treatment. Well, a massive public outcry erupted immediately. It was so intense that the police chief was forced to release him, issue a formal public apology, and get this. He ordered all police officers to physically salute the emperor whenever they passed him on the street. From then on, he was basically local royalty. He was even allowed to pay for free meals and ferry rides using his own printed Imperial scrip banknotes, which local businesses were just happy to accept. To put that civic love into perspective, just look at what happened at the end of his life in 1880. When Emperor Norton passed away in poverty, local business clubs stepped right up to fund a grand funeral, buying him a beautiful rosewood casket, and a staggering 10,000 to 20,000 people lined the streets to pay their respects. We're talking everyone from wealthy merchants to everyday street laborers. Moving on to part 2, Fritz Leiber's haunted map. Shifting our timeline forward to the 1970s, we see how this exact same culture of acceptance moved into the literary world, with science fiction and fantasy titan Fritz Leiber. So Leiber was really going through it. He was reeling from the tragic death of his wife, Jonquil. He moved into this modest apartment at 811 Geary Street, right in the Tenderloin district. And it was here, in the middle of his deep grief and isolation as a recovering alcoholic, that he had this profound artistic rebirth. Channeling all that pain, he essentially pioneered modern urban fantasy with his 1977 World Fantasy Award-winning novel, Our Lady of Darkness. Now, what's really interesting about this is a concept he introduced called Megapolisomancy. It's this fictional occult science, postulating that massive modern cities, with all their heavy steel, concrete, and electric grids, actually generate their own terrifying elemental spirits, which he called paramentals. The book's protagonist, who's dealing with this supernatural threat, is a recovering alcoholic based very heavily on Leiber himself. He was literally using this imaginative framework to process his own real-world demons. But Leiber didn't just set his story against some generic city backdrop, he turned San Francisco into a haunted map. He grounded the supernatural directly into the city's concrete canyons and fog. He used his own real apartment at 811 Geary Street, Corona Heights, the massive Sutro Tower where the main character spots a pale figure waving back at him, and the iconic Transamerica Pyramid, which he wrote as this giant occult focal point. He literally turned real-world architecture into a living, breathing occult machine. Let's see how this builds on the city's broader history. Leiber cleverly wove actual Northern California literary giants into his mythology. He connected his occult lore to real authors like Clark Ashton Smith, Ambrose Bierce, Jack London, and Dashiell Hammett. Because he anchored his fiction so deeply into the city's actual lineage, Leiber became this incredibly prominent, beloved mentor in the local sci-fi fandom. San Francisco embraced him, quirks and all, as a true local treasure. Part 3 brings us to Frank Chu's 12 Galaxies. Moving our chronological lineage right up into the modern era, we can see how this tradition of embracing eccentricity survives even in today's hyper-corporate, tech-driven landscape. Frank Chu is undoubtedly one of San Francisco's most famous modern street icons. You'd see him picketing daily with these bright, multicolored, impact font protest signs. His core narrative is this massive cosmic conspiracy. He claims he's the unwilling star of an intergalactic reality show called The Richest Family, which is filmed by telepathic cameras. He protests that a coalition of U.S. presidents, except Jimmy Carter for some reason, and alien populations have embezzled trillions in royalties owed to him. But here is the amazing contrast. His real-world reality? He is incredibly soft-spoken and polite. Because he's so gentle, local businesses, politicians, and even tech startups like Expensify have actively sponsored him. They actually pay him to place advertisements on the back of his protest signs. And the scale of Frank's conspiracy is constantly expanding. The numbers on his signs went from millions to trillions to entirely new invented quantities, like the word Vitkerolians. It's just a perfect encapsulation of how massive and evolving his cosmic narrative is as he proudly displays it on the downtown streets. And much like Emperor Norton, the city didn't ignore him. They physically memorialized him. In 2004, independent owners opened a popular live music club on Mission Street and named it 12 Galaxies, a direct homage to Frank's interstellar lore. This venue hosted huge acts like Phil Lesh and Mudhoney, but more importantly, they made Frank Chu a resident guest of honor. They gave him VIP status and free drinks every night until the club eventually closed in 2008. Which brings us to Part 4, the legacy of eccentricity. So the crucial point here is that these are not just three isolated, quirky anomalies. Whether we're talking about the 1850s, the 1970s, or the 2000s, San Francisco's history is fundamentally defined by how warmly it treats its most vulnerable, imaginative, and unconventional members. Emperor Norton, Fritz Leiber, and Frank Chu were all navigating really intense personal realities, and in every single case, the city met them not with rejection or hostility, but with support, integration, and a profound sense of civic warmth. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to reflect on as we wrap up this explainer. Think about your own community. Does your city tolerate its eccentrics, or does it actively celebrate them? It's a powerful distinction, right? San Francisco's legacy proves that when a society chooses celebration, it creates a unique kind of magic that lasts for generations. I really hope this journey helped you see the value of protecting the dreamers among us. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep questioning the world around you.
Now available exclusively on Amazon Kindle ebooks. Rhizome Summer 2026, a collection of essays, Rhizome Fall 2026, Book 2.